My friend, there is a force within every human being that can either build worlds or shatter them. It is not wealth, nor intellect, nor luck. It is the way we deal with others. Every success story you've ever heard began with a person who learned how to understand the hearts of people. Every failure, no matter how brilliant the mind behind it, began with the inability to do so. In my own journey, I have seen men with great knowledge and skill fall into obscurity because they did not master this simple art. They criticized where they could have inspired. They complained where they could have created. And by doing so, they built invisible walls between themselves and every opportunity life tried to bring them. I once believed that power came from being right, but I discovered that power comes from understanding. You may win an argument, but lose a friend. You may prove your point, yet close the very door through which success was coming. I tell you from experience, every word you speak carries the vibration of either destruction or creation. When you criticize a person, you wound their pride, and pride is a sacred thing. It is the core of human dignity. Once hurt, it will fight you, silently or openly. And when that happens, cooperation dies, enthusiasm withers, and your influence disappears. So I made a vow to study men, not to judge them, to ask not why did he fail, but what was he seeking. The moment you see another's desire instead of his mistake, you discover the key to his heart. And that key, my friend, can open more doors than any degree or fortune. The wise never complain, for they know that complaint is a confession of weakness. When you complain, you say to the world, "My life is not under my control." But the master of his destiny never utters such words. He transforms dissatisfaction into determination and criticism into creation. There was a time in my life when I believed that the sharpness of my mind would guarantee my success. I thought if I could reason better than others, if I could see their errors and correct them, I would lead them easily. But I learned a costly lesson. No man ever won another's heart by proving him wrong. Logic may silence an argument, but it never conquers resentment. I remember a man of great intelligence who could analyze every situation with precision, yet his words cut like blades. His employees respected his knowledge but despised his presence. They obeyed his orders, but they did so with cold hearts, and in the quiet of their resentment, his influence perished. He lost not because he lacked wisdom, but because he lacked warmth. You see, every human being, from the humblest worker to the mightiest ruler, hungers for one thing above all: to feel valued. Not merely useful, not simply efficient, but valued as a person. When you strike that note, when you make a man feel his worth, you awaken something in him that no amount of criticism could ever produce: loyalty. I have found that when I stop condemning others and begin to ask, what led this person to act as he did, a miracle occurs. The fire of judgment dies, and in its place appears a light, the light of understanding. It reveals not an enemy, but a soul, just as fallible and striving as my own. And when two souls meet in that recognition, true influence is born. Understand this truth well. People are not moved by your disapproval. They are transformed by your vision of their potential. When you see greatness in a man, even before he sees it himself, you give him something sacred: belief. And belief is the mightiest power known to the human heart. There is a law as old as humanity itself. What you give to others returns to you multiplied. If you sow criticism, you shall harvest resistance. If you sow understanding, you shall harvest cooperation. And cooperation, my friend, is the foundation upon which every empire of success is built. So, before you speak, ask yourself, will my words build or will they destroy? For every spoken word is a seed, and the soil of another's heart will bear fruit according to the nature of that seed. If your purpose is to lead, begin not with commands, but with comprehension, not with scolding, but with sympathy. The one who understands need never raise his voice, for the heart that feels understood will gladly follow. Let me tell you a secret that few men ever learn. The urge to criticize is the mark of an undisciplined mind. It is easy to condemn. It requires no thought, no restraint, no imagination. But to understand that is the act of a builder, a creator, a leader. Every time you resist the impulse to criticize, you strengthen your character as a blacksmith tempers steel in the fire. You forge within yourself the rarest of metals, self-control. And it is this power, more than brilliance or eloquence, that separates the truly great from the merely clever. You have seen men who explode at the smallest mistake of another, who blame the world, their partners, their government, even fate itself. They spend their days finding fault and their nights wondering why life brings them so little joy. The answer is simple. They poison their own soil with bitterness, and nothing good can grow in it. But the man who governs his tongue commands his destiny. He knows that every harsh word weakens his influence, while every word of patience increases it. Such a man can turn adversaries into allies, obstacles into opportunities, for people instinctively trust those who make them feel safe in their presence. I recall one of my early business ventures. A partner of mine made a grave mistake that cost us a considerable sum. My first instinct was fury. I felt justified in expressing it. But then I paused. I asked myself, what will anger buy me? Will it repair the loss? Will it teach him loyalty? I bit my tongue and instead asked him to explain what had gone wrong. As he spoke, I saw not a fool, but a man tormented by guilt, desperate to prove his worth. That moment of understanding changed everything. He became one of the most faithful associates I ever had. From that day on, I realized, when I restrain my judgment, I invite growth, both his and mine. The same energy I once spent on complaint, I now direct toward creation. When you stop tearing down, you begin to build, and life rewards the builder. There is another truth. Those who constantly criticize reveal far more about themselves than about the ones they condemn. They expose their fears, their insecurities, their lack of mastery over their own emotions. But when you train yourself to look for value instead of fault, you become magnetic. People feel it. They seek your company, your counsel, your leadership because you give them something rare, peace. Do not misunderstand me. To refuse criticism does not mean to accept mediocrity. It means to correct through inspiration rather than humiliation. A wise man can guide without wounding. He can instruct without insulting. His presence uplifts. His silence teaches more than the lectures of others. So, I say to you, watch your words as a jeweler watches diamonds. Before you speak, polish them with kindness. Test them with understanding. Only then, release them into the world. For words, once spoken, never die. They continue to echo in the hearts of others and in the fate that returns to you. When you conquer your tongue, you conquer yourself. And the man who conquers himself has no equal under the sun. There is a power that no school can teach, no title can bestow, and no money can purchase. It is the quiet magnetism of understanding. Once you master it, doors open before you as if by magic. People sense it before you speak. They feel that in your presence they will not be judged, but heard, not diminished, but uplifted. And that, my friend, is the secret of influence that endures. I have stood before crowds that numbered in the thousands, and I have spoken to men whose names were written in history. Yet the moments that taught me the most were not the applause or the agreements, they were the moments when I chose to listen. For in listening, I discovered what moves the human spirit more than any argument, the simple desire to be understood. When a man feels understood, his heart opens like a door long closed. Resentment melts, pride softens, and in its place comes cooperation. You can achieve more with a kind ear than with a sharp tongue. The world is full of men who want to be right, but starving for those who want to understand. Let me tell you this. No one has ever changed another person through condemnation. Judgment hardens. Understanding transforms. If you wish to lead, do not demand inspire. Do not point out faults, reveal possibilities. Speak to the greatness sleeping in every soul, and it will awaken. I once met a man who was known for his temper. He would lash out at the slightest provocation, and no one dared to correct him. One evening, I said to him quietly, "You must have carried a heavy burden for a long time to guard yourself with such anger." He stared at me, speechless. No one had ever looked beyond his behavior to his pain. In that instant, the fire in his eyes faded. From that day forward, his demeanor changed, not because I rebuked him, but because I saw him. Understanding is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. It takes courage to silence your pride and listen with your heart. Anyone can shout, accuse, and find fault, but it takes a master to stay calm when others lose control, and in that calmness lies real authority. Think of the greatest leaders, inventors, teachers, and pioneers in history. They were not those who ruled through fear, but those who inspired through faith in others. They saw beyond error into potential. They looked at humanity not as broken clay, but as unfinished masterpieces. They knew that the sculptor's hand must be firm but gentle, or the statue will crumble. If you desire respect, give understanding. If you seek loyalty, give compassion. These are not signs of softness, but of supreme intelligence. The person who can calm another's storm without a word has achieved mastery of himself, and that mastery radiates a quiet power the world cannot resist. I often tell my students, you do not need to control people to influence them. You need only to understand what controls them, their hopes, their fears, their sense of worth. Once you touch that inner string, you can guide them without effort, for the melody you play will be the one their own hearts long to hear. So, as you move through the world, remember this: each person you meet is fighting an unseen battle. Speak not to their mistakes, but to their humanity. In doing so, you will earn something no authority can command their trust, and once you hold that, you hold the true key to leadership, success, and peace. There comes a time in every man's life when he must decide what kind of power he seeks, the power to dominate or the power to inspire. The first is loud and fleeting, the second is silent and eternal. The man who rules through fear must always defend his throne, but the man who rules through understanding needs no defense, for his strength lies not in control, but in connection. This transformation begins within. You cannot give understanding to others if you do not first cultivate it in yourself. When your thoughts are filled with bitterness, you see only what is wrong in others. But when your heart is at peace, the faults of others appear merely as unpolished potential stones, waiting for the hand of patience to reveal their hidden brilliance. Every negative thought you hold toward another person is a thread that binds you to limitation. Every judgment you release frees you a little more. That is the alchemy of the spirit, the turning of resentment into wisdom and criticism into compassion. I have met men who achieved wealth, yet their words poisoned every room they entered. They criticized, condemned, and complained about everything: their employees, the government, even their own families. And though they had gold in their vaults, they had no peace in their souls. They could buy comfort, but not affection. They could command obedience, but never loyalty. Then I met others, men of modest means, but of radiant spirit. They spoke with calm assurance. They rarely judged, never gossiped, and seemed to carry with them a quiet light that drew others near. When they spoke, people listened. When they smiled, hearts softened. And what struck me most, life seemed to favor them. Opportunities came uninvited. Support appeared from unexpected places. Why? Because life always rewards the spirit that builds rather than destroys. You see, the universe mirrors your inner state. If you live in constant criticism, you invite resistance. But if you live in appreciation, you summon cooperation. The energy you project is the magnet that shapes your circumstances. Every harsh word you utter sends ripples into the world, ripples that return to you as obstacles. Every word of kindness sets in motion unseen forces that clear your path. So I ask you, which world do you wish to build? One filled with opposition, or one filled with allies? One ruled by bitterness, or one ruled by peace? The man who has mastered his emotions has no enemies, for he sees in every human being a reflection of himself. If he meets hostility, he recognizes it as fear. If he meets arrogance, he sees it as insecurity. And because he understands, he is never shaken. His calmness is his fortress, and his gentleness is his sword. Remember, you cannot light another's path by cursing the darkness. You must become the light yourself. That light begins the moment you choose to understand rather than to blame. The moment you stop asking, who is wrong, and start asking, what can be learned? From that choice grows greatness. You will notice your voice changes. It carries warmth instead of tension. Your presence changes, people feel at ease around you, and your destiny changes for life. Responds to the energy of your heart more than to the power of your intellect. So, my friend, practice the inner art of turning judgment into joy. Do not wait for perfection in others before you offer respect. Offer it freely, and you will see miracles unfold where once there was conflict. This is not a moral sermon, it is a law of nature. The law that says, what you give, you grow. If you give understanding, you will grow in wisdom. If you give patience, you will grow in strength. And if you give love, you will grow in power, the only kind of power that lasts. A principle, no matter how wise, is of little use until it becomes a habit. Understanding must not remain a beautiful idea. It must live in the pulse of your daily life. I have seen men nod at the wisdom of patience and then destroy an entire relationship with a single sentence of anger. I have watched leaders speak of harmony and then humiliate their subordinates before others. Such men fail, not because they lack knowledge, but because they have not trained their hearts to act upon it. In business, understanding is a more valuable asset than any capital investment. I once advised a company whose director complained that his team lacked discipline. They don't listen, he said. They're careless and lazy. I asked if he had ever asked them what they thought of his leadership. He frowned, uncomfortable with the question. When he finally did, he was stunned. His employees did not lack discipline, they lacked recognition. They felt invisible, unappreciated, and therefore uninspired. Within months, after he began to praise instead of punish, their performance soared. The same people, the same work, only the spirit had changed. In family life, the rule is the same. A husband who criticizes his wife for every small mistake builds a home of silence. A parent who constantly finds fault in a child kills curiosity and replaces it with fear. But the parent who listens, who sees the struggle behind the behavior, turns discipline into growth. You cannot raise greatness through judgment. You must nurture it with faith. In leadership, the power of understanding is even greater. The best commanders do not drive men with threats. They lead them with respect. They know that dignity is the most powerful fuel in human nature. Once a man feels that his worth is recognized, he will give more of himself than any order could compel. I have witnessed soldiers endure unthinkable hardships, not because they feared punishment, but because they loved the one who led them. Understanding is not weakness. It is the highest form of intelligence. To understand is to see beyond the surface, to look into the cause, not just the effect. When a worker fails, do not rush to scold. Ask what stood in his way. Was it ignorance? Was it fear? Was it confusion? Each of these requires a different remedy. Criticism treats only the symptom. Understanding heals the cause. You must also learn to practice understanding toward yourself. Do not lash out at your own mistakes. The mind grows not through punishment, but through insight. Ask yourself, what lesson hides in this failure? And you will find that even your errors serve your progress. This discipline, like any other, grows with exercise. Begin small. When irritation rises, pause. Ask yourself, what does this person truly want? What is he afraid of losing? These two questions will dissolve most conflicts before they begin. When you master the habit of understanding, you become rare. You will find that people come to you not merely for advice, but for the peace they feel in your presence. They may not know why, but they will sense that you see them not as tools, not as problems, but as human beings striving for significance. And when people feel seen, they will walk with you through fire. Never forget, the greatest victories are not won over others, but within yourself. The war against criticism is a lifelong battle, but every victory brings you closer to mastery. Each time you hold your tongue when anger rises, you strengthen your power. Each time you choose understanding over judgment, you refine the gold of your spirit. There is a law of nature that few understand. Life flows toward harmony. Wherever there is peace, energy gathers. Wherever there is conflict, it scatters. The man who rules his own emotions becomes a living magnet to all that he desires, for the world instinctively seeks the calm that he radiates. I have stood among men who trembled at every challenge, who lashed out at others when fortune turned against them. They thought that anger would make them strong, but their rage only revealed their weakness. It exposed that they were ruled by the world instead of ruling it. Then I have met others, men of quiet strength who faced storms without complaint, who met insult with composure and disappointment with patience. And I saw something miraculous. While others fought for control, these men attracted it effortlessly. The power that changes lives is not the shout of authority, but the silence of certainty. When you cease to criticize, you cease to react. You become proactive, deliberate, centered, unshakable. From that place of calm, your mind operates like a precision instrument. Ideas come clearly. Decisions feel effortless. While the critic is busy finding fault, the creator is busy finding solutions. Criticism scatters the mind. Understanding focuses it. The critic drains his own energy trying to fix the world. The master directs his energy toward creating a better version of it. That is why serenity is not a passive state, it is the ultimate form of control. Let me ask you, have you ever noticed how people naturally turn toward those who remain calm under pressure? When panic spreads, everyone seeks the one who doesn't panic. They sense safety, confidence, and direction. That man may not raise his voice, yet his presence commands the room. His stillness says more than another's shouting ever could. This calm cannot be faked. It is born from understanding. When you truly understand people, you no longer expect perfection. You no longer feel betrayed when they fail you. You see their behavior not as an attack, but as a reflection of their own fears and limitations. That awareness gives you freedom, the freedom to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. In business, this peace makes you a pillar others can rely upon. While competitors waste their energy blaming the market, you adjust, adapt, and advance. In relationships, it turns conflict into growth. In leadership, it creates loyalty that no salary could buy. Because the calm mind is always fair, and fairness is the language of trust. You must train your inner world as you would a garden. Remove weeds of complaint before they take root. Water the soil with gratitude. Expose it to the sunlight of understanding. Do this, and your spirit will bloom, regardless of the season around you. Remember, life does not respond to frustration. It responds to faith. Every complaint you utter is a declaration of defeat. Every word of patience is an act of power. The one who refuses to be offended cannot be defeated, for he lives above the reach of insult. And so I say, become the calm center of every storm. When others rage, listen. When they despair, encourage. When they fall, lift them. That is leadership in its purest form. For influence is not measured by how many obey you, but by how many rise because of you. I have witnessed many men rise to greatness, not because they possessed extraordinary intellect or inherited wealth, but because they mastered the quiet art of understanding. You see, understanding is not a passive trait. It is a deliberate effort to look beyond words, to feel what another person feels, to sense the storm behind their silence or the hope beneath their hesitation. When you truly understand another, you build a bridge that no force of criticism or pride can destroy. Too many people listen only to reply. They treat every conversation as a battlefield, where words are weapons and victory lies in being right. But I learned long ago that the man who must always be right, will never be great for his pride, becomes the cage that holds him back. The wise man listens not for rebuttal, but for revelation. He listens to discover how he may serve. There was a time in my youth when I believed success was earned by overpowering others, by proving them wrong, outsmarting them, outworking them. Yet the truth I discovered was the opposite. Success comes from aligning with people, not opposing them. You may conquer an argument, but you lose an ally. You may silence a critic, but you also silence a potential friend. The greatest victories in human relations are not won through domination, but through harmony. To understand people, one must learn patience. Every soul carries an unseen burden, worries, regrets, secret dreams. You cannot see them, yet they shape every word, every reaction. When someone speaks harshly to you, it is rarely about you. It is the echo of something unresolved within them. The man who grasps this truth gains immense power not over others, but over himself. He is no longer tossed by emotion, no longer provoked by trifles. He acts with calm because he sees with clarity. There is a peculiar thing about understanding. It disarms hostility faster than any argument. When a person feels understood, their defenses melt away. They begin to see you not as a rival, but as an ally in their struggle, and that is the moment influence is born. Influence never grows in the soil of judgment. It flourishes in the sunlight of empathy. I once met a young businessman whose employees were always tense, always leaving. He asked me what secret formula he was missing. I told him, "You are trying to manage men when you should be understanding them." He stared at me in confusion. I continued, "Before you demand their best, find out what burdens their hearts. Before you give orders, give attention." Months later, he wrote to me, saying he had begun visiting each worker, asking about their families, their ambitions, their struggles. To his astonishment, production rose, morale soared, and loyalty became his strongest asset. The man who understands people does not need to push them. They move with him willingly. That is the essence of true leadership. A leader does not stand above, he walks beside. He wins hearts, not through command, but through connection. And let me tell you, nothing on this earth will reward you more richly than the habit of seeing the world through the eyes of others. It will make you a better partner, a wiser friend, a more compassionate leader. It will dissolve bitterness, mend relationships, and open doors that force could never unlock. When you practice understanding, you begin to live by a higher law, the law of harmony. This law governs all enduring success. It whispers, seek unity, not victory. Seek truth, not triumph. For in the end, the man who understands others will never lack allies, opportunities, or peace. Would you like me to continue with part 9, the penultimate section of this speech, where Hill's voice turns from reflection to action, guiding the listener on how to practice this understanding daily? I have said that understanding others is the key to influence, but let us not leave this truth in the clouds of theory. Let us bring it down to earth, where you can use it in your office, your home, your daily encounters. For principles, no matter how noble, are worthless unless put into action. The first step is simple, yet few ever take it. Listen more than you speak, not the passive listening that fills time while you prepare your reply, but the attentive, curious listening that makes another person feel truly seen. The average man is starving for attention. He moves through his days surrounded by noise but deprived of understanding. When you give him that rare gift, your full focus, he will feel drawn to you in ways even he cannot explain. The second step is this. Find something to admire in everyone you meet. It may be hidden beneath layers of flaws or mistakes, but it is there a spark of worth, a glimpse of goodness. When you acknowledge it sincerely, you awaken in that person a deeper desire to live up to your belief in them. That is influence in its purest form, not manipulation, but inspiration. Next, never begin with criticism. It is the favorite weapon of the weak and the surest way to make others resist you. Criticism hardens the will and blinds the mind. It creates walls where you need doors. The man who starts with condemnation may feel righteous for a moment, but he loses power for a lifetime. Instead, begin with appreciation. Begin with a word of encouragement. Then, if correction is necessary, offer it gently, not as a blow, but as a bridge. And remember this, you cannot change others by demand, only by example. When you wish for more kindness, be kind first. When you want understanding, offer it first. When you crave respect, show it first. People are mirrors. They reflect what you give them. The surest way to elevate another person is to raise your own conduct before their eyes. I have observed that the most effective leaders never use force. They win loyalty by awakening pride. They show a man that his work matters, that he matters, They make him feel significant, and once a man feels significant, he will give his best without being asked. A true leader does not say, "Do this because I said so." He says, "Let us do this together because it is worthy of us." Let me confess something. There was a time when I failed miserably at this. Early in my career, I believed authority meant giving orders. I spoke sharply, demanded perfection, and wondered why people resisted. It took many painful lessons to realize that influence is not taken, it is granted. It is the fruit of trust, grown slowly through respect and understanding. Do not think, however, that this approach makes you weak. On the contrary, it makes you formidable, for when people willingly follow you, your power multiplies. You no longer rely on fear or hierarchy. You command hearts. Fear creates compliance, but respect creates commitment, and only commitment builds empires. So I urge you, replace the impulse to criticize with the habit of understanding. Replace the instinct to command with the desire to cooperate. Replace the urge to be right with the ambition to do right. Then watch how doors open, not because you forced them, but because you earned the key. Every relationship, every opportunity, every fortune begins with one skill: the ability to make others feel valued. Master that, and the world itself becomes your ally. For people are not machines to be directed, they are souls to be inspired. And when you learn to inspire others, your influence will extend far beyond the limits of your presence. Your words will echo in hearts long after you've spoken them. That, my friend, is the quiet glory of true power. Would you like me to write Part 10, the concluding section, the grand closing in Hill's voice that ties together understanding, humility, and leadership into one final, powerful call to action? There comes a moment in every person's life when they must choose the foundation upon which they will build their influence. Some choose authority, others choose intellect, a few choose wealth. But the wisest choose understanding, for it alone endures when all else fails. I have stood before men who possessed great power, and yet were utterly alone. They could command obedience, but not loyalty. They could purchase service, but not sincerity. Their influence was like a shadow at sunset, long and impressive for a moment, then gone with the fading light. But I have also stood beside humble souls who commanded no armies, who possessed no riches, and yet drew others to them with a quiet strength that no money could buy. What was their secret? They made others feel important. That, my friend, is the greatest of all human arts, the art of making people feel that they matter. It is the essence of understanding, the root of harmony, and the heart of all true leadership. If you would rise above mediocrity, learn this art well. Begin today by speaking kindly to those you might otherwise ignore. Offer a word of appreciation where criticism would have been easier. Show patience where anger would have been natural. In doing so, you are not merely changing others, you are refining yourself. Understand this truth. Every act of consideration is a seed. You may not see its harvest today or tomorrow, but it will grow in loyalty, in friendship, in goodwill. Life, in its infinite justice, rewards those who lift others higher. The man who plants kindness reaps strength. The one who sows criticism gathers loneliness. When you walk into a room, ask not, "How can I impress these people?" Ask instead, "How can I make them feel that they are impressive?" Do that, and you will never lack for friends, opportunities, or influence. People will forget your cleverness, but they will never forget how you made them feel in your presence. There is a quiet majesty in the man who seeks to understand rather than to dominate. His confidence does not shout, it radiates. His power does not threaten, it uplifts. He does not seek victory over others, but victory over himself, over pride, impatience, and the need to be right. And once he conquers those inner enemies, he becomes unstoppable. I tell you now, the world is starving for such men and women. Not more intellect, not more inventions, but more understanding hearts. The kind that can turn conflict into cooperation, suspicion into trust, strangers into allies. That is the unseen force that builds civilizations and sustains them. Perhaps you think your influence is small, but let me assure you, no gesture of understanding is ever wasted. A single kind word can redirect a life, A patient ear can dissolve years of resentment. A gentle response can end a battle before it begins. You never know how far your influence will travel when guided by compassion. So let this be your creed. I will seek first to understand. I will build bridges where others build walls. I will light candles where others curse the darkness. For I know that in serving others, I enlarge my own soul. My journey has taught me many lessons, some costly, some humbling, but none greater than this. When you master yourself through understanding others, you have mastered the finest art known to man, the art of influence, the art of harmony, the art of greatness. And as you walk this path, remember success that enriches only you will die with you, but success that uplifts others will live forever. Go forth then, speak gently, listen deeply, lift others, for in doing so, you will discover the truest power a human being can ever possess, the power to make others feel valued, and through that, to touch eternity.